Hello everyone, I'm Loressa Joy D. Paguta, and welcome to another lesson still under Module 3 of this course. In this specific session, we will talk about study skills. So for our learning objectives, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand what is effective learning and its importance, identify different study techniques and strategies, and lastly, create an effective study plan. Before we begin, I'd like you to ponder on this question. What was one thing that you learned recently and how did you learn it? You may pause this video to think of the answer. Indeed, there are a lot of things that we have learned from birth until the present. As babies, we learned how to walk and talk. When we got older, we learned how to run around and play, ride the bicycle, or even climb trees. When we started going to school, we learned how to read and write and learn different skills in class. As adults, we continue learning different skills to help us land in our dream jobs. Indeed, learning is considered as a lifelong process. It does not seem to stop, but rather continues as long as we are alive. So what is learning? Learning refers to the acquisition of novel information, behaviors, or abilities after practice, observation, or other experiences as evidenced by change in behavior, knowledge, or brain function. This means that it is not enough to say that we already know something. The evidence of learning is in a change in our behavior or thinking. Learning is also often described as a relatively permanent change of behavior and mental processes as a result of practice or experience. When we say relatively permanent, this means that anything learned with deliberate effort is generally stable through time, but without constant practice and application, it may soon be forgotten. Educational researchers agree that learning is much deeper than memorization and information recall. Deep and long-lasting learning involves understanding, relating ideas, and making connections between prior and new knowledge, independent and critical thinking, and the ability to transfer knowledge to new and different contexts. Thus, learning may also be considered as a reflective activity, which enables the learner to draw upon previous experience to understand and evaluate the present so as to shape future action and formulate new knowledge. So what is effective learning? Remember, in the previous session, we talked about self-regulated learning, which refers to monitoring and managing one's cognitive processes and the awareness of and control of our emotions, behavior, motivations, and environment in relation to learning. Effective learning includes an extra crucial ingredient which actively involves the student in a metacognitive processes of planning, monitoring, and reflecting. Thus, effective learning requires students to be actively involved in their own learning and personal development. Think of it as students learning how to learn, rather than simply parroting information or copying techniques from teachers or other students. So why is it important for students to engage in effective learning? 1. Effective learning increases engagement, self-direction, and helps understand deeply. In addition, it also helps develop various strategies and greater facility in learning with others. Educational psychologists believe that students should not be only taught the lesson content, but also be equipped with effective strategies for learning. But before we can identify what learning strategy works best for us, we first need to be aware of our own learning strategies and techniques. So to end this session, I'd like you to work on this short activity. Fill out this table evaluating yourself as a learner. In the first box, identify your strengths as a learner. For example, are you good in numbers? Do you memorize fast? Next, identify your weak points as a learner. Here, you may write down things you feel you still need to improve. For example, you find it hard comprehending some words, or you feel sleepy whenever you read a book, among others. Third, identify your study habits. How do you study? Do you write notes, highlight your books, or do you read aloud? Whatever strategy you use. And then lastly, for each strategy you identified, also evaluate if it is effective or not. Remember, there is no right and wrong answer here, so please take this activity as an opportunity to honestly evaluate yourself as a learner. So that ends this session. We look forward to reading your answers. See you in the next one. Hello once again. Welcome to another session on study skills. In the previous session, you were asked to evaluate yourself as a learner by identifying your strengths and weak points as well as your study habits. Every student has a strategy they use to remember information more efficiently while studying. Some of them take notes, some make diagrams, some prefer to listen to lectures, etc. Since no learning style fits all students, research was conducted in order to understand the way students learn new information best. One of the theory of understanding learning styles is the theory of multiple intelligences developed in the late 1970s and early 1980s by Harvard director Howard Gardner, who believed that there are 8 distinct intelligences that are closely connected to learning. Let's look at these one by one. The first learning style is visual spatial, or in simple terms, learning by seeing. This refers to the ability to conceptualize and manipulate large-scale spatial arrays or more local forms of space. Visual learners prefer the use of images, maps, and graphic organizers to access and understand new information. They tend to learn seeing information delivered through pictures or other types of graphic presentation. Another learning style is bodily kinesthetic. This refers to the ability to use one's whole body or parts of the body to solve problems or create products. Kinesthetic learners are individuals who prefer to learn by doing. They enjoy a hands-on experience. They are usually more in touch with reality and more connected to it, which is why they require using tactile experience to understand something better. Third is musical. This refers to the sensitivity to rhythm, pitch, meter, tone, melody, and timbre. This may entail the ability to sing, play musical instruments, or compose music. Musical learners prefer using sounds or music or even rhythms to help learn. Another learning style is linguistic. This refers to the sensitivity to the meaning of words, the order among words and the sound, rhythms, inflections, and meter of words. This is sometimes called language intelligence. These types of students simply enjoy making use of the language itself. Like musical learners, verbal ones enjoy rhymes and wordplay. These are individuals who learn better when they take in information in auditory form when it is heard or spoken. They are prone to sorting their ideas after speaking rather than thinking ideas through before, since to them, saying things out loud helps them understand the concept. While musical learners may benefit from forming an emotional connection with sound, logical learners look for patterns and trends in what they learn. They search for the connections and the reasons and results. They also tend to understand relationships or patterns, numbers and equations better than others. Next is interpersonal style. This refers to the ability to interact effectively with others. This includes sensitivity to others' moods, feelings, temperaments, and motivations. And this is sometimes called social intelligence. Interpersonal learners are those who learn by relating to others. Often, these people share stories, work best in teams, and compare their ideas to the ideas of others. In a sense, others help them think of new ideas of their own. And then we also have interpersonal learners. The intrapersonal, as opposed to interpersonal learner, is someone who works and learns best when they are alone. This style is characterized by sensitivity to one's own feelings, goals, and anxieties, and the capacity to plan and act in light of one's own traits. This is sometimes called self-intelligence. Intrapersonal learners set individual goals that are challenging but not impossible. They are also motivated by internal forces rather than external ones. They are often introverted individuals, but not always. These people often enter creative fields, become entrepreneurs, and sometimes small business owners. But they are usually in fields or industries that allow them to work without direct supervision. Lastly, we have naturalistic learners. This refers to the ability to make consequential distinctions in the world of nature, as, for example, between one plant and another, or one cloud formation and another. This is sometimes called nature intelligence. The naturalist learns by working with and experiencing nature. If this sounds a lot like a scientist, it's because that's how scientists learn. The naturalist loves experiences, loves observing the world around them, and captures the best information or knowledge through experimentation. In many ways, they are similar to physical, tactile learners. The main difference is they prefer to do their hands-on learning outside. What do you think is your learning style? Are you more of a visual learner or an auditory learner? Do you prefer to do things or are you stimulated by solving puzzles? Are you more of an interpersonal or an intrapersonal learning? Whatever learning style suits you, make the most out of it and find ways on how to improve it. So that's all for this session. See you in the next one. Hello everyone, welcome to the last session on study skills. So far, you have already been introduced to the different learning styles, and at this point, the next question we have to answer is how we can improve ourselves as a learner. In a few weeks' time, you will be entering college, and some of you may be equally excited and anxious. College life is different from high school, and so you need to equip yourselves with the skills that can help you in your academic journey. One thing that you can remember is the 4 E's of effective learning. This includes engaging interest, encoding information, elaborating meaning, and evaluating progress. So first, engaging interest. Learning begins with focused attention. When attention is divided, it is difficult to process new information at a level needed to understand complex material required in college-level courses and to retain this newly acquired knowledge. So in learning, remember to always focus your attention on the lesson. It is challenging, but find ways on how to stay focused in class. Next, encoding. Information must first be encoded to be retained. As a learner, we need to take note of the important points that we really need to remember. You may make use of signaling cues to direct your attention to material that is important to encode in memory. For example, you may highlight key terms and concepts, read the summaries or review sections in your textbooks. Third is elaborating meaning. This is needed to strengthen new learning. Memory is strengthened through 2 forms of rehearsal. First is maintenance rehearsal or rote memorization, which requires simply repeating words or phrases. The second form of rehearsal is elaborative rehearsal, which requires one to reflect on the meaning of the material and relate it in our own life experiences. Thus, when you study, make sure that you are not just simply memorizing the terms, definitions, or even the formula. You have to give meaning to what you are studying. Lastly is evaluating. Students should not wait until exam time to find out what they don't know. You should gauge your progress as you read the text or learn from it. You may take tests or quizzes to do this. It is also helpful that you track your progress as you go through the class. Take note of your scores in your quizzes, exams, and even your homeworks. Remember, we are in charge of our own learning. Here are other study tips and tricks that you may use. First, before studying, consider where you will study. Make sure to find a place to study where you can focus. Second, ask yourself, when should you study? Avoid cramming. Plan your study time. It would be helpful to make a schedule of when you are going to study what particular subject. For example, if you have exams scheduled next week, when will you start studying? These are things that you need to prepare. Third, how much will you study? It would be helpful for you to make a study plan. This includes deciding how many chapters to read, what assignments to work on first, and so on. You also need to decide what learning strategy to use to make learning more effective. Fourth is to read to understand. At times, we find ourselves reading one sentence over and over again because we could not comprehend it, and that is okay. If you feel that you are no longer absorbing the lesson, take a break, relax your mind, and go back to reading after. Remember, elaborative rehearsal is more effective than rote memorization. Another tip is the use of note-taking. According to studies, the more senses are involved in studying, the better is our retention. So when we write down our lessons, the act of writing helps facilitate retention of what we have written. Lastly, do not forget to collaborate. Studying with a classmate is also helpful. You can both discuss concepts, and by doing so, you are able to check if you have understood the concepts correctly. You do not need to be alone in your academic journey, so make sure to have a study buddy. So remember, as self-regulated learners, we need to plan how we will study, monitor if our learning strategies are effective, control or make necessary improvements in how we study, and reflect on our progress and even our failures. Studying and learning will always be a part of our lives, and so we need to have effective strategies so we can enjoy learning and be successful in our academic journey. So that ends our session. I hope that you are now ready to become more effective learners. Thank you for listening and see you in our next lesson.